Good morning, Woodlawn United Methodist Church, and everyone out there on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Pastor Sean McLeod. I welcome you to our live stream on Sunday, May 17th. I would venture to guess that probably by now you've developed a routine. So maybe you're watching this live with a cup of coffee, maybe you grab some donuts, maybe you cheated and you're sitting in the Tim Hortons parking lot eating your coffee and donuts. I don't know, I'm not here to judge. Maybe you're watching this, maybe you had to work this morning, so you're watching this kind of pre-radio recording after the fact. However you are joining us, I welcome you to our time of worship. And I know it doesn't always feel like what we expect, but that's okay. We've had to make some adjustments to deal with everything going on, and you've been very faithful and very patient with us as we've done that. I want to take an opportunity this morning just to give you some information as to where we're at. We finally have a meeting scheduled with some of our leadership on Wednesday. We're going to get together by teleconference and discuss what we need to do to safely reopen in-person worship here at Woodlawn. And we will let you know the result of that as soon as we are confident of what we're going to be doing. As we'll be communicating to you, there will likely be some protocols that we're going to ask visitors, all our visitors and church members to follow, as well as some other things. So I want to prepare you for that. I know some of you are probably aware that some churches did reopen for in-person worship this morning. Obviously, one of the things we're going to be watching is some of the things they've been doing. And of course, we will take direction from our district superintendent and our bishop as well as most importantly, following the directives of state and local health officials as we go forward. This has been a very challenging time for all of us, and I pray that you are doing well. Even if you're anything like me and my wife, you're probably going a little stir crazy at this point. I get that. And nobody would blame you if you just walked out of your house one day and just screamed. It's probably therapeutic. So you know what? Go for it. Today we're gonna sing some songs. We're gonna continue our little mini-series here looking at recalculating when life throws you a curveball. So I'd like you to join us this morning as we sing. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, we're going to pray. Lord, there is so much going on right now. And while we have a lot of things answered, there's also a whole lot more questions about what's going on. In many places, people are becoming very agitated and frustrated by local leaders. And Lord, help us to remember that it's not about us and our comforts and our needs. It's about yours. Help us to remember that even though we're frustrated and agitated, it's not about us. It's about you and your kingdom. And it's about loving people, even if that means we're a little uncomfortable. Help us to stand for honesty and integrity, and most of all, for humility and love with everyone we meet. I pray you be, and even though we're not here physically, the Bible is very clear. The qualifier isn't really in there, really, that it has to be physical. It just says we're two or more gathered. And though we cannot be together physically, we know that your Spirit is here with us wherever we happen to be watching this morning. And I pray simply, Lord, that you will use this service to do the work you would want to do in all of us. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to sing number 397, I Need Thee Every Hour. verses this morning. All right. If you have your Bibles, I'd like you to either turn, or if you got your phone Bible, look up the 26th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. You'll find that maybe you didn't know the number, but this is one that contains many familiar Bible stories for us. And today we're going to explore something that I think for a lot of us and a lot of Christians, we talk about this theme of recalculating, right? When things don't go as planned. Well, one of the things that we experience when life doesn't go as planned is this thing called failure. And so we're going to explore that topic a little bit this morning by looking at a very interesting example of failure in the Bible. It's one that most of us probably know if we learned in Sunday school. But maybe we're going to look at it and maybe learn something new this morning. And hopefully God is going to maybe show us why failure happens, but also why ultimately that doesn't matter. Matthew 26, I'm just going to read verses 31 to 35 and then 69 to 74. Hear the gospel writer this morning. And Jesus told them, "This very night you will fall away on account of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the disciples, not just Peter, said the same. Verse 69. Now Peter, this is after Jesus had been arrested and taken before the Sanhedrin. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You were also with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But he denied it before all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath. "I don't know the man." After a while, those standing up there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you were one of them. With one of them, your account gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately, a rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. So, I want you to think about a time this morning where you failed. A good way to maybe think about this is, you know the old saying, don't make promises you can't keep, right? How many of us have made promises in our day? I think I see everybody raising their hands, right? Josh has 2 up, you know. This is fun, right? Right? I think I see you and you're taking it. How many of you ever made a promise that you failed to keep? Yeah. The pastor still has his hand up, so you know, right? We do that very often. And usually the consequences of that are usually, they can be severe. Maybe you lose your job because you made a promise to your boss, or maybe something happens, or some other type of consequence. But the reality is that very often those promises aren't necessarily that bad. And so here in our text we have Peter, and not just Peter, mind you. Matthew, we tend to gloss over this. It wasn't just Peter. Peter's the one who ultimately denial was predicted. But they all said, no, we'll never deny you. Well, spoiler alert, by the end of the evening, they had scattered to the four winds. I wonder how many of us, if somebody walked in and said, you're a Christian, how many of us would deny it? Something to think about, especially right now. Especially that even with all this going on, we live in a culture that is increasingly hostile to Christians at times. It's certainly not communist China or Russia or Soviet Union or even a place like North Korea or closed countries that are out there. But still, occasionally our culture has this hostile view. And so Peter ultimately, that moment in verses 74 and 75, how many of you do you think you felt that? That had to have been oh no, I have done the very thing that I promised, not just anyone. Remember, this is Jesus. This is his rabbi. This is his Messiah. The Messiah, our Messiah. And Peter realizes, well, I just blew it. I can only imagine what that must have been like for him. But I think if we're honest, I think you and I actually have a better idea than we realize. How many times have you, maybe you've realized that you've been caught in some sort of sin, right? Whether it's lying, whether it's some sort of sexual sin, whether it's greed, or maybe it's even gluttony, I don't know. Any one of the laundry list, you say, you know what, God, I'm going to turn over a new leaf today. I'm going to make a change. When you go to church, and then you find out that change isn't so easy. You find out that doesn't always work. You fail. Whatever. And then you feel, you probably have a good idea of what Peter felt. I know whether it's happened in the last 6 weeks or 30 years ago, we all at some point in our lives know what this feeling's like. Maybe for some of us, we failed in a role where we served at church. And that's one of the reasons why we don't serve anymore. Maybe we feel like such a failure that's why we say hi to Pastor Sean, and then we say bye to Pastor Sean, and we never see him again until next Sunday, right? Right? I don't know. And you know what? I don't want to belittle that feeling this morning. Because we see in the Bible it's a very real thing. Peter felt like a total screw-up at that point. Totally unworthy. And thinking, my God, what have I done? But if you remember the story, later on, Jesus is going to restore him. He asks him a series of questions, says, Peter, do you love me? He asked him 3 times. And ultimately, Peter says, yeah, I do. And it's also very interesting that if you're following along in your Bible, you may have noticed what comes next in chapter 27. We read that Judas went and hid himself. You see, Peter had what we would call godly sorrow, but Judas kind of had this thing called worldly sorrow. Judas was more sorry of what happened, not so much realizing what mattered. And so Judas' story ends very differently. Both of them had failed Jesus in one form or another. But it's their response that becomes so interesting. Peter realized he screwed up and ultimately found forgiveness and love and grace in the very one that he denied. Judas, for whatever reason, had trouble doing that. Now, we'll Judas is a whole other story. We'll get to that later, but I think you sort of get the point, right? You see, those times when you have failed, one of the things I've learned over the years, I had to learn this the hard way about 5 years ago. I was struggling with something, and I finally just said, God, I can't do this on my own. Because here's the reality. If you try to deal with sin on your own, you will fail. Let me say that one more time so you hear me. If you try to deal with sin on your own, you will fail. That's just an inevitability of our human failure and our sin nature, right? But there's this wonderful thing called grace. There's prevenient grace, and we have all the terms, right? And this grace that changes our lives from the inside out. And all we do is say, Jesus, I can't do it on my own, but you can. And when we surrender all of our garbage, think of it this way. If you went to, let's say you want to pick up, I don't know, a new Ferrari. I don't know, whatever. If you show up to the car dealership with a couple bags of trash and say, yeah, I want to trade this in for a Ferrari, they're going to laugh at you. Now, you might lie to them and say that there's money in the bags when there's not. You didn't tell them it was monopoly money, did you? Right? See, here's the thing about God, is that when we take all of our ugliness, our sin, our brokenness, our failures to God, he says, okay. And he helps us to bring those failures up, helps us to be made new creation. And all we have to do is surrender. So go back to that time where you failed and how bad you felt. Have you ever actually surrendered not just that moment, but all those moments to Jesus? If you haven't, I would encourage you to do so. I would just encourage you, wherever you are right now, to say, God, I need your peace and your forgiveness for every time I've failed. I need this every day, by the way. If you don't believe me, I know someone who will gladly tell you otherwise. I'll even give you her phone number. It would be my wife. Right? So, what's the takeaway from this? Well, we've probably failed at doing something. There's some things that I kind of feel like a failure for as your pastor. And I don't mind admitting that. Now, I'm probably being hard on myself, and I know that. But part of this is because life has thrown us some gigantic curveballs. It's forced our navigation systems to recalculate everything, so much so that I don't think our computers quite know what to recalculate. Every day it seems like, okay, we've recalculated, we have a new road. Okay, that one's blocked. And then you find out that the bridge is out, and you think you have a plan for dealing, and you have a plan for reopening, and then there's some new study that comes out tomorrow that says, well, that might be wrong. And so you have to recalculate, and you have to rethink. And you feel like a failure. The Bible reminds us that we've not been given a spirit of fear, but of wisdom and of sound mind. That's in 1 or 2 Timothy. Go look it up. Let me know which one. I just don't remember. I know it's in one of those epistles. But the point is this morning, no matter how many times you failed, Jesus will always take you back. Jesus will always restore you, no matter how bad. And you know what? No matter how badly you screwed up, he may not take away all the consequences of your sin, but he will forgive you and he will restore you. Many of you, those of you who don't, we had Alex Tarr a couple of months ago, came to preach here. Alex Tarr is a wonderful example of that, because I know the guy's story. So what is your story this morning in this regard? How you doing in this area? We've already sung the song, I Need Thee Every Hour. I think it's safe to say that right now, we need God every second right now. We need to focus on him as much as we can. Not so that we can earn brownie points. Not so that we can get into heaven until something happens to us. But so that God's glory can be revealed work through us, and that we can go and make disciples we're called to do. I want you to hear me this morning. It doesn't matter how badly you failed, how badly you screwed up, how badly you sinned. God's grace is always there and always available. All you need to do is ask for it and see it. Lord, we're taught sometimes that failure is the end. That's not how you operate. And so, Lord, I pray this morning as we're praying that those who are calling out to you say, Lord, I've screwed up. I've made promises I couldn't keep. I've sinned in ways I shouldn't have. But I need your grace and your forgiveness. I pray that they would find that this morning. In Jesus' name. We're going to sing a popular hymn in closing, number 377. It is Well With My Soul. Okay. I want to thank Josh and Krista and Colleen for helping out with the tech stuff and the music this morning. Couple of things, as I mentioned this morning, earlier this morning, there will be the leaders, it's basically the worship committee plus a few people added on, worded together on Wednesday night, and we will appropriately communicate kind of the results of that committee meeting, as it were, or as Josh likes to call it, the COVID-19 committee, right? He's nodding, okay. Also a reminder, of those of you who are, which is almost the same group, those of you who are on ad board, we will have our Zoom meeting next Tuesday, not this coming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day. That'll be by teleconference/Zoom as well. Also, just a heads up, in case you forgot with everything going on, next Monday is Memorial Day, and the office will be closed that Monday. So, again, Brenda's, I think she's still in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just the week after she'll be on a different schedule. So, that's all the announcements. Josh, are there any other announcements that I didn't know about? I don't think so. I think we're good. All right. Have a wonderful morning. Have a wonderful day. God bless. I will see all of you tomorrow night